having many other names, and these we glanced at last time, right, or the 2 weeks ago, the Aquarian conspiracy and so on, networking movement, the third wave I mentioned the last time. In the last couple of weeks, I've come across the third wave in writings 2, 3, 4 times. The third force, this terminology kind of brings us in to reflect on what? The force in Star Wars, is it? Star Wars? I have not, deliberately, I've not watched any of that stuff, but I'm aware there's a force, and the evil force, and the good force, and so on. New consciousness, transcendental movement, transcendental meditation, human potential, humanism, the new spirituality, there it is, the new spirituality, the new gospel, the New Age movement, as that testimony mentioned, secular humanism and humanism, various shades and colors of humanism. All right, now it also has principal aims. Now you never want to forget this, the principal aims, and when we say principal aims, you can immediately bring in the parallel thought of Satan's principal aims. He wants to establish a new world order. The scriptures already forecast that for our benefit as believers. Babylon the Great, Revelation chapter 18, and the bulk of those verses. And then the other main principle is a new world religion, Mystery Babylon, Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 through 18. All right, so you've got your one world government, you've got your one world false religious system. This one world order cannot thrive and keep a whole entire variety of ethnic and religious faiths together unless there is a new world religion or one world false religious system that will act as the universal brotherhood faith. Okay? But now we're informed by Daniel and other areas of scriptures that there will be confederations, the kings of the east, the king of the north, the king of the south, king of the west. They will, particularly now that we're so wrapped up with Africa and the whole entire sweep of North Africa is in turmoil, but it is the final phase of what the Islamic extremists have been working for. If we would think of this whole image here, this outline, as the continent of Africa, south, north, a number of years ago, I was at another Bible study with Reed Henson, and we had the world map bigger than this whole entire screen. It took up the whole wall. And we were discussing the fact that they had discovered papers that came out of, quote, Islamic headquarters down here in the South Africa. And it laid out their entire strategy for taking over the entire continent of Africa. And the strategy was to get their foothold established here and then just keep advancing northward. Well, we've known there's been turmoil in the center of Africa, Sudan and so on. But now the conflagration is all the way up here. So what we can see in roughly 10, 15 years is they have pursued that game plan and they have just about taken over and Islamicized Africa, the entire continent. And that's why I'm calling it the birthing of the Southern Kingdom. Now that, if our theological perception, prophetic perception, spiritually driven, is correct, if this is indeed the birthing of the Southern Kingdom, then the next thing we want to see is the emerging of the king of that kingdom. And I got on this track because we're talking about, well, there's going to be a universal religious system. What about Islam? So many, quote, prophecy students today are saying, well, the one world false religious system, well, you can see the handwritings all over the place. My goodness, it's going to be Islam. No, it is not going to be Islam. It's still going to end up being the Roman Catholic Church, and it is still going to be called the church, Christian church, and so forth, and Christendom, then what about Islam? Well, it'll be autonomous to the entire continent of Africa, but somehow there'll be a thread or a common denominator that will allow the bridging of that faith with Christian faith and other cults around the world. And if you, repetition is vital for teaching. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. A book is being prepared right now. It's been in the works perhaps for minimum 3, maybe 4 or 5 years now. And the author is over in Europe. And his purpose of his book was to see what is the religious climate in the air in various European countries and working your way down into the Middle East and so on. And, also the West in terms of North America and so on. And he discovered something that he never anticipated. It was a discovery. No matter what particular country or its religious system, they all had one thing that they seized upon, and that is the child-mother story.
Ran into an article or a link on WorldNet Daily to Walid Shabbat's website. His son Theodore has written an article where he was looking at Babylonian, I guess it's some story in ancient Babylon that goes back